So this is the kit. You can see all the little baggies it comes with. All the ICs, the speaker, the battery, crystal glass. I believe that's just a dimmer, a cable, it's USB, and the other end to power it. The actual board, PCB, and the manual. So it has all the instructions. The first step on the manual is installing resistors. There is the 10K and 330. Know which is which. First part of our instructions is to add the 10K resistors, the 330 resistors, and just reminds you that there's no polarity on the resistors, but if you do want to line them up in unison, I guess you could do the same side for the resistors just to make it look nice. The second part, we add the crystal oscillator, which they put as Y1, and it's right there on the right of the schematic, and it looks just like this. Will be this one right here where it says Y1. So obviously you do have to solder these, and this is my first project with soldering, so not all of them are perfect. And as for the capacitors on part 2, there is 22P and 104. Those are both ceramic. So these right here, this is the C3 and C2, which are the 104s. C1 right here is my 104. C4, C5 is the 22s. And that's just the status. For the next part, we are installing the battery, which comes right here by itself. So forgetting to mention where you find that crystal oscillator, which is known as Y1 in the project. It was in this baggie with the rest of the components. Now for the battery, you do have to install this mount. It's called a battery snap, I believe, so that's how it looks. It was in that same baggie. And the way that we're gonna add this to button 1, or battery 1 I should say, there's this pointing edge right there that we're going to be putting this way towards the left, pointing to the left, and you can just put these straight into the hole right there, and then you just have to solder it. For this part, we are going to add the LED. If my camera can pick this up, there's a polarity on this. Right there you can see it's negative, barely, a small little line there. The opposite end is a plus, you can also barely see that. But you're going to align that with the board. Tip for when you're going to add the LED, you could mark with the marker before you actually solder this thing in. What you're going to be soldering is on this side. You could point either the negative or the positive with a mark. So at the positive, I will be putting a red light just for voltage or current. So there's a red mark, and next time I would know that is the positive side when I'm going to install this, just to make it easier. The next part is installing 2 IC sockets. That's U1 and U3. These have 8 pins, And also we're going to install one IC socket U2 that has 28 pins. Pretty much all these sockets that it comes with. 2 8 pins and one 28 pin. For this part, I am just going to demonstrate the way that I'm going to install these sockets. So these two sockets are identical, and the differences here is you want to make sure where the little curve is on the top, or the notch I should say. So on this one it's right there, and when we look at our manual again, you could see that regardless of whether it's U1 and U3, or actually, well yeah, if you're choosing one, just make sure that when you're going to install it, the notch is on the top part here, and then the notch is on the bottom part here for U1. So U1 should be a little bit easier first. The notch is pointed down. So here's our board, and actually on the board you can see the notches top and bottom. So that's just easy, just put it down. Alright, see if it'll fall out once I flip it over. Nope, it stays in. Hopefully it stays that way while we solder it. The pins do fall out once I let go of it, so it does need something to sort of keep it intact when you do flip it over. Or ideally you just get an instrument where you could have something hold it for you like this, and you just rotate it and you could solder it so easily. But that's not the case here. Alright, so I believe this is gonna work. This is gonna keep the pressure on the IC socket perfect enough for this. So you can barely see the pins, but let's do that. You heat it up right there. You guys can see that. We just feed the solder. Okay, so we got one down. Let me turn it around and make sure that it's pushed all the way in. And just press on it really quick. Kind of sucks that it's right next to the oscillator. So the hard part about there is you want to put the correct amount of solder, and you also want it to land right. So let's unplug this. You can see. So yeah, you want to do that for the next IC right here and the other IC right here. Make sure the notches are correct. The next part is the buttons. Comes with 3 buttons. So we'll be adding these 3 side buttons. They're called side switches, S1, S2, and S3. So one will be going right there in the middle, and the other 2 right here. So probably easy to get the S3 first down, just to get comfortable with this type of switch. Along like that. This will be easy to solder. These are the 3. Just solder them, and we'll go to the next part. So these are the transistors, the S8550. You want the flat face pointing into the circuit. example will be like this. Flat face is right here. It's flat. Yeah, so like that for the other 5. Sorry, the next part is installing these electrolytic capacitors. So there's 2 of them. Doing this part first will be easier. I'm not sure why in the instructions. Number 6 is installing transistor, which I just showed with flat. They want you to do the capacitors after the transistors. I say the capacitors first, just by looking at the circuit board. It will be easier. So the capacitors are right there, C6 and C0. Make sure you install the right ones and put the polarity right, because that matters for these capacitors. And actually, I can demonstrate right there. That is the positive side, and the slashed part will be the negative side. So C0 is the 10 microfarads, and the C6 on the right side is the 470 microfarads. So do those before you install these transistors. So this is the capacitor. You have the negative sign right here that is pointing towards the short leg, and the long leg is the positive. So this is the 10 microfarads, so it's going to be C0, and the positive is going towards the positive lead right here, and then the negative right there. Push that in, and then if you're like me, you can just push that to the side so that it locks a little bit easier for you to solder. C6 is 470 microfarads. Install like this, and you just solder these. This fits perfectly. You solder these, and transistors are next. So we're going to skip the photoresistor really quick on step 8. Just because I have to make sure how these work, since it will be the first time I try to read about them. Seems like it doesn't have polarity, but step 9 is the thermistor, so we'll also have to skip that. And it does not have polarity as well. So we could do the thermistor, and we could also do the digital power jack tube, which is this right here. And it will be simple to just connect right here. If it fits. So yeah. So this shouldn't interrupt with any of the other processes. We're just going to skip and solder this in, and also put in the thermistor and the photoresistor. At this point, this is how it should look. Should have your switches, the LED, capacitors, both the electrolytic and the ceramic right there, the photoresistor, the transistors, the resistors, the ICs, the thermistor, and capacitors, your ceramic or your crystal oscillator, which I found out that you're supposed to kind of lay flat right there. I mean, I can't fix it at this point unless I want to break the wire, but it is supposed to be laying down, or you could set it down. There's the battery cage and our DC power. The next part is applying the ICs, I believe. So we're going to add the chips right here. And we will be setting the pins also, I believe, right here. So let me take a look at that really quick. Or actually, these bottom and top pins are for our digits right here. So for this part, we're going to put in our dot matrices. And I mean, pretty much what you can see right here is the dot, which is on our dot matrix right there, right there, right there, and right there. So the only one that's going to be flipped is the third one. This is how we do this part. And you just have to solder it. Make sure for this one the dot is the other way. By the way, for this part you can actually and might as well put these in all at the same time, so that the surface, if you're laying it down on the ground, is flat. So this came damaged, and you just have to pull the pins back. For this part, it needs 8 pins, and we do that by splitting these, which come attached, and you just snap it. So right here it just tells us that the short legs goes through first. So short legs on top of the chip, and bottom of the chip has the black box and the rest of the pins. So to put this one in, I actually had to use some pliers to just adjust the pins. Again, with this one, the chip points up. If you'd like, you can also solder it before you apply this. Next is our STC, which points to the right. And also, the orientation is just noted by the dot on the amplifier, or just in general. Do this one first before all of them. So I have to adjust these. So here I just want to show the way that I fit this into the IC board. So we can see that it's pretty far gap. We can kind of go very slowly on the pressure, both sides, inwards. And you see it's still incredibly short on hope for the best here. Still a little loose. These pins are going to fall out if you don't take care of it. You see how one side is a little bit more. I think I just got it, so push in. Oh, we just got to put this one, which I soldered. Should be good. It's not touching capacitor. It's not touching the other chip. And that should be it. Gotta put the speaker now.